Welcome to Tech. My name is Stephen Croft, or the Dabbling Developer, and I hope to take you from to about the latest tech specs and news as it relates to you as an enthusiast and to me as a developer. Mass Effect Andromeda comes out March 21st, which is right around the corner. You better believe I'm excited. So much so that I gobble up every piece of news that leaks out about it. Recently, the file size of the game was announced. I know what you're thinking. Am I seriously going to watch a video about file size? Don't worry, it leads to a more interesting subject about how games are made. Okay, I know I have hyped this up a bit, so let's just hear it. Mass Effect Andromeda is 55 gigabytes, which is the equivalent of downloading Captain America Civil War nearly 30 times. 55 gigs is not the biggest game ever created. There are some PC games that, with all the DLC and extras, are nearly 100 gigs. But for a console game, 55 gigs is quite a bit. So why is it so massive? Now, the Mass Effect series is known for having massively expanding universes with branching dialogue trees and a plethora of characters. But why would it need to take up so much room on the hard drive or disk? In short, it is because the developers and designers have the space, so they're going to use it. A Blu-ray disc can store around 50 gigabytes of data, which leaves a lot of overhead to be used for all those extras. Those extras being high-res and realistic textures, uncompressed audio, and every translation in the book. Remember last episode when we were talking about polygons and how many it takes to render things like a tree? Well, imagine a lifelike character or environment. If you want them to look more realistic, you need to add more detail, and detail leads to more polygons, which leads to more data to be stored and accessed from the disk or drive. Now, developers and designers could take the detail down a notch. Not every character on the screen needs to have truly amazing facial features, as I'm just going to blow their head off anyway, right? Well, in short, no. Why take away the detail when there's room on the disk for it? In the highly competitive space of game design, every detail is going to be scrutinized and compared to other games. If the reviewer explores a world like The Witcher, which is renowned for its beauty, and then jumps into your game that just seems to be a little bit lower res, a little bit off compared to The Witcher, you better believe they're going to pick up on it and mention it in their review. Now, there are ways around it. If you look at a game like Zelda Breath of the Wild, which just recently came out, it has a file size of only 13 gigs. You can make the argument that games don't need to be so massive, and Nintendo is leading the charge in that area. The reason it can be so small is because Nintendo is using a different art style. Their style is to render a game as more of a cartoon or a painting than a highly realistic masterpiece of computing power. The art style fundamentally takes less power and fewer effects to achieve, and Nintendo needs to do that as their consoles are consistently less powerful than the competition. This doesn't take away from the fun and beauty of the game, it just places it in a different category. Okay, so if we want an immersive, realistic looking game, we need data expensive textures and models. But what about all that audio and language included in the file? Can't we get rid of some of that and shrink down the file size so I can download it in less time? Absolutely, if you have the money. Building games is expensive. The most costly piece being the salaries for all the engineers, designers, artists, directors, actors, well, in short, the hundreds, if not thousands, of people who work on a single game. We can pay those people to make the game bigger, more impressive, and more fun, or we can pay them to compress the audio to save some space. Most of the time, the audio compression is going to lose. And believe it or not, that can take up a huge amount of space on the disk. Halo 5 has uncompressed audio, and that totally bloated the file size. Cost also comes into play when including every language needed for every region the game is shipping to. Manufacturing a disc is cheaper than the old days of having to put the game on a cartridge, especially when Nintendo had a monopoly on the cartridges. You had to pay them in order just to get a cart. But it still takes time and money. And if the publisher has to take extra time and money to press 12 separate copies of the same game to go to different regions of the world, then make sure the logistics of shipping the right discs to the right areas, or simply making sure the right files go on the right digital stores, you better believe they are going to charge the developer for it. So the developer will cut down on that cost by just placing everything into one version of the game, write a piece of code that detects region or allows for language selection in the menu, and then ship it. There's room on the disk for it already, right? With games being so cheap to buy, and yes, they are cheap, if we look at the history of games where a Super Nintendo game could cost around $100, a cost-benefit analysis must be done on every aspect of the game. We have a lot of room above us when it comes to file space, but very little room when it comes to budget. But why does any of this matter? If it means getting a better game, make it as big as you need to. Put it on 15 discs. Make it a terabyte. I don't care. I want all the textures. Well, this large file size is single-handedly keeping games at a higher price and forcing publishers to sell physical copies. If we could go all digital, games would drop in price as developers could publish directly to the digital marketplace and cut out the publisher. You see this in indie games a lot. They don't have to hire a publisher because their game is small. They can publish directly to the digital marketplace, and typically those games are cheaper. Not every area is made equal when it comes to internet speed. Rural regions often suffer from much slower internet speeds, or even internet access at all. For example, the current average download speed for Dupree, South Dakota is 5 megabits per second, which are DSL speeds, which makes downloading a 55 gigabyte file, if you can keep it at peak speeds and nothing else is happening on the network, it would still take more than 24 hours to download. And peak speeds are never possible, so you are realistically looking at a day and a half to 2 days of downloading while you don't touch anything else on the internet. This is just unrealistic. If you want someone to buy your game in a region like this, you need to sell a physical copy. You can't just offer a digital copy. Places like this need physical copies because getting a digital one is just not feasible, which means file size does matter. Developers and publishers walk a fine line when it comes to optimizing their games. Do they concern themselves with loading times and file size? Or do they make it as pretty and awe-inspiring as possible? Digital media is absolutely the future, but to get there, some things need to change. Either high-speed internet needs to become more prevalent, or the file size of games needs to come way, way down. Developers and designers try to deliver the best experience possible for their particular game. Sometimes that means downloading a 15 gig day one patch. Hopefully they take into account internet speeds when they do that so we can start playing the game sooner. But not everyone is perfect. It is an incredibly difficult balancing act to make a game great for everyone. And many people fail at it. Take No Man's Sky. They ran into a similar problem with having dreams larger than the size of their team working on the game. They wanted to include this massive world with all these different characters, and they came to realize that that takes a lot of man hours, a lot of people, a lot of time, a lot of money. Hopefully the next time you see a game's file size, you can appreciate what it means. See a 50 gigabyte game on the PlayStation Store? It's probably going to be beautiful. Just remember that fun is measured a whole different way. Thank you so much for watching. It means a lot to me that you did. If you liked it, please like the video so I know I'm doing something right. What is the most beautiful game you have ever played? Go ahead and drop that in the comments so we can talk about it. I love talking games with my friends. And then also subscribe to the channel so we can keep flipping that huh to a huh. Thank you.